Well, and somebody asked me the other day, who is more likely to beat Ohio State, Notre Dame or Penn State? For me, I said Notre Dame because we saw it in 2023. They almost beat Ohio State. All they got to do is look at how many men they got on defense. They're good to go. Penn State, they're just like Charlie Brown trying to get that football away from Lucy. They can't get it done. They can't get it done.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people ask me that too, and one, I am happy that it's not just a sole like Big Ten matchup in the championship game, right? I'm happy that Notre Dame has made it in for obviously for a multitude of reasons, but I mean, one, we've already seen it this year. We've watched Notre Dame, or we watched Ohio State and Penn State play, and Penn State scored 0 offensive touchdowns in that game. It's not really going to get it done against Ohio State. Now with your offense putting up 0 touchdowns, right? Their only touchdown of the game was on a pick six on Ohio State's first offensive possession. And so you go through and then you just start to look about like Brian has this saying, and it's just football is a game of matchups, right? Don't pay attention to the programs. Don't pay attention to the team names. Take that away and you evaluate the athletes for what they are. You know what I mean? And I think Notre Dame also matches up well with Ohio State. The things that Ohio State does well, Notre Dame does well. The things that Notre Dame does well, Ohio State does well, which I think is what makes this matchup so intriguing to cover. But, you know, you go through and you look at it, and it's there were a lot of questions around who beats this Ohio State team because they looked the most dominant team in college football in the postseason. You know, they beat Tennessee, they put up 42. They beat Oregon in a rematch, 41-21 in the Rose Bowl. Then they face a Texas team, and Texas to me is relatively on defense comparable to what Notre Dame is. They're big, they're fast, they're physical. Ohio State's defense or offense struggled to put up points. You know, they scored 21 offensive points against Texas. Not saying that because that happened against Texas, Notre Dame can hold them to 21 or under, but it gives you a little bit more of a gauge. I mean, I've gone on record saying that if Ohio State did what they did to Texas, what they did to Tennessee and Oregon, I would not feel as confident about this national championship matchup as I do right now. Because sometimes when a team is hot and they're playing that well, sometimes you just got to tip your cap to them, you
There
know.
you go.
But
Well, and Texas gave a little bit of that blueprint by putting a ton of pressure on Will Howard, and I think what helped Texas a little bit was the fact that Jeremiah Smith had 3 receiving yards in that game. That's not like the performance against Tennessee and Oregon, and but unfortunately, had Texas not gotten in their own way on offense, they probably it would have been a little bit better than losing by 2 touchdowns, or better yet, it would have been closer than the experts had it. But Ohio State, again, had they not had so many penalties, they had like 9 penalties in that game. Had they not had a bunch of penalties, it would have been much more in 28-14.
yeah. I mean, you go through and you watch how that game unfolded, and Texas really wasn't able to generate a whole lot on the perimeter. I mean, Quinn Ewers' 2 passing touchdowns were both to Jadon Blue. They're like receiving back, essentially. You know, you go through and you pay attention to what that matchup was, and you brought up Jeremiah Smith being held to 1 catch for 3 yards. And there is a direct correlation, and this has been constant throughout their entire season. When Jeremiah Smith is contained, because the expectation of no Notre Dame fan should be, well, now Leonard Moore and Christian Gray should hold him to 1 catch for 3 yards. Like, it's Jeremiah Smith, right? I mean, he's one of the best receivers in college football as a true freshman. I think that standard's pretty unrealistic, but there is a pattern of when Jeremiah Smith does not have a Jeremiah Smith-esque type of game, like what he did to Tennessee, what he did to Oregon both times, what he did to start the season. Ohio State's offense struggles more than what people think it does. You know, against Penn State, he didn't have the best game. He didn't have a bad game, but he didn't have the best game. Ohio State scored 20 points on offense. You know, you go through and you look at the Nebraska game, and yet he had 70 yards receiving off of 3 catches. One of those was a 60-yard touchdown. Outside of that, he had 2 catches for 10 yards. Ohio State scored 21 points on offense. You look at the Michigan game, when Michigan was without Will Howard or Will Johnson, their best cover corner. And Jeremiah Smith, I believe, had like 4 catches or 5 catches for 35 yards and a touchdown, but he got 1 target the entire second half. They put up 10 points on offense. You look at the Texas game. He had one catch for 3 yards. Offensively, they put up 21 points. So there is a correlation between what Jeremiah Smith does for the offense and the lack of points that they do put up. And to some that might sound elementary. Like, of course, Trev, their best player doesn't become a game wrecker and they don't put up as many points. But that's kind of the trend that we've seen with Ohio State this season. With all the great weapons that they have, it's still focused around their wide receiver one, similar to last year, right, when they had Marvin Harrison. So, for Notre Dame, they're coming off of a game where they allowed 0 receptions and 0 yards to to Penn State's wide receiving core, which is one of the crazier stats that I've seen watching college football. So, it's going to be, again, that's why I said at the start of the show that these matchups are more even than what some people believe it to be, contrary to what the national media thinks and contrary to what some of the pundits say. Notre Dame does match up pretty well in some areas against Ohio State. That's why I think this game's going to be so fun.
Agreed. And I think Leonard will have to have a good enough game against the Buckeyes. Like, he's going to have to make more big plays with Greathouse. And we're going to have to see more big plays from Jeremiah Love. And we got to see some big plays from the special teams as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to have to be a solid game from all 3 phases: offense, defense, special teams. Yeah, the thing that I've loved about Riley Leonard is also some of the things that frustrate me the most about him, because he's been so fun to watch. He has. And in the postseason, in every single game, he's done what he's needed to, right? Like, he's not, everybody knows this by now, he's not the Joe Burrow passer, right? He's not going to go up and pass for 400 yards, but he's also not the Lamar Jackson where any game he can go and rush for 130 yards, but he does what he needs to. Basically, whatever the game dictates, Riley Leonard does that. Against Indiana, they just, hey, man, don't turn the ball over, run the offense, play point guard. There's going to be a point where we need you to kind of step up and make a play. And he did that late in the fourth quarter to put the game away, or not late in the fourth quarter, early in the fourth quarter, to put the game away, steps up into the pocket, hits Jordan Faison for a deep post route, puts him in scoring range. He runs it in for a touchdown. Against Georgia, the running backs, Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, weren't able to get going. So Riley Leonard, the tagline that everybody walks away from the Sugar Bowl is, Riley Leonard passed for 90 yards. It's like, he did. He also rushed for 80. He was the team's leading rusher. He had 80 rushing yards on 14 carries. Against Penn State, they needed him to be more of a downfield passer, and they needed him to be efficient. And unfortunately, he had 2 poorly timed interceptions, but they were because he was looking to be aggressive and push the ball down the field, right? But then you go and look at the efficiency numbers. Jaden Greathouse had 7 catches on 7 targets. Aeneas Williams, a true freshman running back, he had 5 receptions on 5 targets. Mitchell Evans had the most targets he's had all season. He's kind of been that one player that everybody's kind of been waiting for that breakout because of the season he had last year before he tore his ACL. And Mitchell Evans had 5 receptions on 9 targets. And so, yeah, Jack, I mean, you're completely right. Riley Leonard's going to have to play well, but in both of the phases, with his legs and with his arms, to beat Ohio State.
Agreed. And we look at the score prediction for the national title game. I hope Notre Dame wins it all, but for right now, I've got the Buckeyes winning a tight one, but I will be pulling heavily for Notre Dame because what can I say? I'm a sucker for teams that need to end national title droughts.
I appreciate it, man. I'll be pulling for them too. I don't have my official score prediction ready yet because we haven't put ours out for Irish Breakdown, but I do have Notre Dame winning this one. I don't think that's really a surprise to anybody, but like I said, in years past, Notre Dame goes into this game and there was a clear mismatch at the coordinator position or the athletes on either side of the field, right? You go through and you look at the 2015 Notre Dame Ohio State game. Brian Van Gorder, Notre Dame's defensive coordinator at the time, is not going toe for toe with Urban Meyer. You even look at the game last year. I have a lot of respect for Jim Knowles and what he's done with that Ohio State defense. Jared Parker was a first-time offensive coordinator, not first year at Notre Dame, a first-time offensive coordinator. And he's going toe-to-toe with Jim Knowles, right? You go and you look at the 2020 playoff game, and Tommy Rees is going up against an Alabama defense. And so it's just there's mismatches, right? But this year, where it counts, Notre Dame has Al Golden, who's led a tremendous defense in back-to-back years. He's in his third year, similar to Jim Knowles at Ohio State. And they got Mike Denbrock from LSU, who I think is one of the more decorated offensive coordinators in college football. Yeah, especially what he did with LSU the past couple years. He's had a couple stints in South Bend. So yeah, I think the talent and the athleticism that this team has, compounded with the coordinators that they have on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, I think it evens the playing field a little bit for what Notre Dame has going into this one.